Okay. Hi everyone. It's a pleasure for us to have you today. I think, yeah, all right. It's a pleasure for us to have you today. Today's workshop is going to be very interesting. Um, but let me start by introducing our GDG. This session was brought to you by GDG Kuwait. GDG is a group of Google developers with different backgrounds, but have some interests in technology development. The main goal of our GDG group is to share tech knowledge and skills with those who seek such knowledge for free. And by that, we are contributing in developing a good tech platform in Kuwait. GGG Kuwait has done many workshops and talks, such as Django workshop for web development, Android and iOS workshops, cybersecurity, Google Cloud, tech hackathons, and many contributions to share good knowledge. This time we are providing you with our Codelab data in Cloud Firestore with iOS. And it will be presented to you by Midhat. So Midhat is a computer engineering graduate. She's working in web and mobile application development for 3+ years. She's an iOS developer at NOT, Waveline Media. She's also a certified iOS developer from Udacity. I hope you enjoy today's session with her, and I'll leave the stage to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Sharuk, for the wonderful introduction. Hi, everyone. I am Midhat, and I'm an iOS developer at Nubbed, which is a news aggregator platform. So it basically asks you as a user to subscribe to a few daily and weekly newspapers, and then it shows you the whole news feed as those aggregated newspapers. So in my 4 to 5 years now of developing in iOS, I have always been a little wary about wanting to do side projects because it used to always be dependent on a backend developer. If it is like a complex database and I cannot do it statically, so I used to be like, no, I don't want to do it. How am I going to? Because I'm not a experienced backend developer myself. So I get very apprehensive about the whole database URS thing and everything. So yeah, then later I discovered Cloud Firestore, and it has basically changed my life. Anyways, so let's start with the Codelab. I have linked the Codelab over here in the chat. And yeah, let's start with it. Just open up your Codelab. Let me share my screen. Okay, 1 second. Yeah. So I hope you have gotten the email for the Xcode and Cocoa Pods so that we can start right now, because it is a basic requirement for iOS to have your Xcode updated and Cocoa Pods updated as well. Let's start with, okay, so our goals during this Codelab will be reading and writing data, very usual from a database, listening to the changes in real time, authentication, like OAuth. It could be a social media OAuth, or it could be email, simple email password, and doing some complex queries so that we can build a working prototype um, for basically launching it without a backend developer. Yeah. So let's go to our Firebase console. I hope you guys can see it. And we are going to add a new project. We will call it Firestore iOS Codelab. Okay, continue. Yeah, create a default account, create project. Till then, let's go next because it will take a little bit of time. And go to your terminal and clone our Friendly Eats restaurant catalog app. So for this, 1 second, I will need to stop my sharing and share my terminal window. Yeah, sorry. So right now I'm going to go in my documents and I have a folder called projects where I will clone this. All right, cloned, and we can open our project in Xcode. Oh, I will have to stop sharing again. And do a pod update on our Friendly Eats. We can just follow whatever is written over here in our terminal. So let's go to the Friendly Eats project and update our pods. Till then, we can go to our Firebase console and start with adding an iOS app. So over here, you can also add Android and web apps, but today, since we are doing iOS, we will add the iOS app. And even though your terminal is updating pods, which I think is done for me, so just a few seconds. Yeah. Now I'll go to my projects where I have added the restaurant catalog app and open the workspace, not the Xcode project. Okay, because we have enabled our pods, and for enabling our pods and building it with our project, we need to use it with workspace. Go to our Friendly Eats. 1 second, I think I will have to share this with you. Yeah. And that's your bundle identifier that the Firebase console is asking you for. So that's what you need to add. Otherwise, you don't need to add a nickname or the App Store ID. App Store ID will only come into play when you are launching your app, when you're going live with your app. Then we click on the register app and download the config file. This is basically to tell the Firebase project that this is a registered application and this is where we need to build with this app that we have over here. Okay, so now we will drag and drop this first into our Xcode project. Under the friendly eats folder itself, we will add this. It should be, 1 second. Yeah. So we will need to, create folder references is fine, copy items, okay, and done. Now you can see the Google Service Info plist has been added to our project, and we will just run it and see whether if it's crashing or anything, just a basic build. The initial build takes a little bit of time. Let's hope everything builds without crashing. Okay, till then we will add a database to our Cloud Firestore. I think everything will be fine. We can add this pod and we can do the pod install later. Just let's add this pod called Firebase Analytics into it. Go to our pod file, and here, save it so that we can install this pod later. That's not a problem. And the next part, the fourth part in the initialization of your Firebase app will be that it will ask you to configure the file, which we have already done in the starter project. As you can see over here, we have already configured, initialize our Firebase database. And we can skip this step, that's not a problem. Okay. Now, yeah, let's go to the Codelab. And go to your authentication part. I hope you have all done the first few initialization steps. Let's go to our authentication part and use your sign-in method as email and password, because that's how the UI is of the restaurant catalog app. Let's enable email and password. We don't need password, let's sign in. and save it. Then we can add a user over here. I'm going to add my own email address, and password will be password, and add. This will be useful when we have to sign in to our application. Now, we do a create database on the Cloud Firebase and do it in test mode, not in production mode, because that will make your application limited to a few hits every day, and after those few hits, you will have to pay. This is fine. This is fine. The location of your Firestore. Okay. So till then, I will explain to you that how does this relate to a table in SQL. For example, we are all, most of us are familiar with how SQL works with columns and rows. So Firestore has collections. Collections are equal to a table in SQL, and it has documents inside those collections which equate to row, but it's not like it's identical to it. It's just so that we can make a structure and we can understand it better, because it's a NoSQL database. Firestore is a NoSQL database, and you can just dump data wherever, however you want. But so that it's a better structure for us to retrieve and to set the data, for us to easier to code for us, that's why. So the documents will equate to rows in an SQL table, and the fields will be inside the documents, which will be equal to columns. Now these fields are not provided with each document. You can put whatever fields you want in the document, and it does not need to be same for each collection, but just for our own sanity, basically, as coders, we need to make it a little bit of a relational structured database. Okay, so if you haven't still understood how this will work, I will show you an example. For example, we have a database of users with the cars they own. So now over here we have table, a cars table, and a special needs table. So now special needs is optional, right, for each user, and special needs and user table can be mapped 1:1, whereas users table is mapped 1:many with the cars table, many cars, but one user will only have one certificate number identity for the special needs certificate, right? So now we are going to add ID, name, email, special needs ID in a users table, which will be mapped to the ID of the special needs table. And we will have ID, owner ID, model name, license plate in the cars table. This owner ID will be mapped to the ID of the users table. Okay. So, and we will have the model name like basic. So for example, this is how your structure is in SQL. This is how it will be in Firestore. So you will have a collection of users. So we can like add a collection called users over here and make it auto-generated ID with email, name, and special needs ID. We don't need to add any data as of now because we can edit it later. Also, we can add a new collection called cars over here. And add a owner ID. By the way, this document ID is the user ID, and license plate module. All of them can be strings. Now, this users can have a document, and each document can also have a collection. So over here, since special needs and users is 1:1, we could also add a collection right here for the special needs table called special needs, and we don't need to map it through ID because this will be only for this document. So it will always be mapped for us instead. So we put a certificate number here. So we can delete this field called special needs ID from here. I hope you're understanding how this is working. Okay, and we have also added authentication. So we can go to our restaurants table view controller did populate button in the Xcode project. Just search for did populate button. And we can see that there's a for loop in which we are going to add this collection where we are getting the collection of restaurants. We have although not added the collection of restaurants yet, but we are going to get the collection, set this collection through the document restaurant, which is going to do it on a random basis and run it again. Hopefully it will run faster this time. On your simulator or your device, you can see that it hasn't yet started though. I'll show you my simulator. Yeah, I'm on a simulator. It's taking so long to just build. I don't know what the problem is. Okay. Wow, there are 300 tasks remaining. Come on. I think it's going to fail. That's why it's taking so much time. Oh wow, it succeeded. Okay, let's hope it does not crash. And yeah, not crashed yet. Working fine. Right. So we can sign in with our email, the email that we use for, or that we added in the authentication. You can add multiple users in the authentication and use any of those emails. Sign in. Yes. So now, like for testing what we have just added, that is setting the database, we are going to click on the populate button. And this is not going to display anything because we haven't added the code for the populate button, I mean to display. But you can go to your Firestore and just reload it, and you'll see a new collection called restaurants with many documents in it. Yeah, here we are. We have restaurants, we have many documents in it. All right. So coming back to the Firestore Codelab, we are going to change the rules of the database app. We go to the Cloud Firestore. One second, let me change my screen. Okay, let me do it as an entire screen. Can I do it that way? Yeah, so I don't need to keep changing here. And we go to the rules. And change these rules. For the rules right now say that after 1 month, this is automatically going to stop. We don't need that. So what we are going to do is we are going to change it to whether to check whether the authentication has been done or not. If the authentication is null, then it will not be able to write into your database or read from your database. It will give you an error right away when you try to read. All right, coming back to our database. This is our restaurants database that you can see with each field over here, as you can see, is also same. That's just a structural thing. Anyways, let's continue. So now we are going to display our data, and in the restaurants table view base query is just basically getting our basic query to get collections, get or set any of the anything in this response collection. Okay, we are going to be displaying now. So we'll go to the observe query and copy this part. Observe query here, display this data. Yeah, so over here we are adding a snapshot listener, which is like a callback thing. If you have used web services in the and previously, you would know that this is like a callback thing. Once we receive all the data that we need, because it's asynchronous, so once we receive all the data, this completion handler will be called, and then we can display it, use the data however we want, and manipulate it for the application. So we are going to be reloading over here, but if we try to run it right now, also it will not show you exactly what we want. So we need to set all our views and everything so that we can get all our data properly in the table view. So we will go to populate restaurant method. And display our data over here. And now we will run it. So once on running this, we should get all the data that we have populated in our database. We'll be able to see it in the UI. Yeah, so now you can see we have all our database data over here. The next part will be filtering this data. Now you can see this button called filter, which has 4 things, that is category, city, price, and sort by. So, but there is a issue with the Firebase query. When we filter and order by through the same query, it is not functioning properly, is what I understood. So what we are going to do first is go to our filters view controller over here. Sorry, not filters view controller, the main storyboard, where all our UI is. And we will remove the sort by for now. Because it's giving some compound query error. So we will remove it by uninstalling it. You can go to your edit button and just go to the bottom and uninstall it. Okay, so now we have only category, city, and price. And that's what we are going to use. So let's get back to our filter query, where we are checking that whether we have added a category and the field of the category, price, city, and sort by. Let's add this in our table view controller, query with query. Yeah. Now we are going to sort our data. Okay. So now over here, as you can see, it's all optional. We are doing optional unwrapping over here and adding the fields to filter. This filtered query has come from the base query, as I had told you before, that this is just a basic normal query to get all the restaurants from the collection. Limit to 50, yeah, 50 restaurants per per call, because it should be fast enough as well. All right. So now we are going to filter, and just to check whether this is running properly, we need to keep testing our code at each step, each modification. Sorry about the tone if you are getting scared. It's just to alert me that, okay, stop procrastinating. Okay, so let's go to the filter. Sorry, let's see first whether we have like some data that we can cross check with. We have a coffee. So let's go and filter according to category, that is coffee. We just want to filter all the coffee places everywhere. All right. So we have 3 coffee places Yeah, two of them I did see. Third one I did not, but I think it must be there. Okay, now we can clear it and we are back to the data. In the same way, you can test for city and price, medium range. Okay, nothing. All right. Anyway, so yeah, now our filter is working properly. We could go to the next step. That is, yeah, you will get this error of the index when you are using the sort by. Since we are not using sort by right now, so I don't think you should get this error. Yeah, all right. The next part. Now we are going to add implementation to our reviews and ratings. So this is our detailed restaurant page. And when you add this plus button over here, you can add a review, which will not happen right now. But yeah, this is what we are going to do right now. And we are going to use transactions for it. Transactions is basically one query where usually in a normal native web service situation to do something like this, we will usually get the data of the restaurant and then we will update it with some, and then we will shoot another query to set the data, right? But the good thing over here is in this transaction, we can do both of these things in one go. So in this transaction, we are going to get the restaurant data for the restaurant detail page, and then we are going to update our ratings and through the same query. So let's copy this transaction. See, over here in the try-catch loop, we are getting the document. Then once we have all the document, we display it, etc. We update our average and set the data and update the data directly. And the next thing we need to do is just reload our table view on view appear, right? And we don't need to do any other protocol updation or um, or any query that we need to hit once we once we update the data. Usually we do that in transactions. I mean in normal web services. So yeah, we copied this and we have to go to review controller in restaurant detail view controller. Review controller. Over here we will write our transaction. And you can see that we haven't added any protocol or anything. We're just using it directly. And just an update on view appear, view did appear. All right, run this. Yeah, so we will go to the detail page, add a new rating, 4 stars, amazing food, done. And it has already reflected here and here as well. So yeah, this is a pretty convenient way of setting and getting data through transactions. Next, now we are just going to update a few more security rules. So right now our security consists of authentication only, but for added security and so that nobody attacks your database, we are going to add UID as well. We are going to see the availability for this UID. Now, how do you know where your UID is? You will go to your Firestore go to the authentication. And in the users part, you will see this UID, user UID over here. This should not be empty. So once we add this, it's not going to change anything for you right now if you have already authenticated and added a new user and not done anything to the UID. But if you change your UID, maybe it will give you some problems. You should try it. Okay. So now we have changed that. Going next. Yeah, for even more added security, you can actually check for all the optionals and everything right here while we are adding a rating. But I don't think it's necessary for a test app. Maybe when you go into production, you should do this. But yeah, this much security is fine, I guess. Okay. So basically over here, we have added the user ID validation. This is only for our restaurant details to get the collection and to set anything into the collection. But we can add this when we are adding the rating. As you can see over here, they are asking you to add it when you are rating it. All right. Next. Yeah. So we are done for this Codelab. But if you are still not sure how you should choose your data structure and everything, you can go to this choosing your data structure part. Other than that, you can add more queries. Just 1 second, I will give you the link. I'm adding this link over here in the chat. These will show you all the compound queries and all the possibilities you have with Firestore right now. And yeah, you should complicate this app as and when and how you want it to. Also, you can do another app called Rekindle. Like if you want to use another side project, or if you want to develop more and understand iOS more, you can make a book exchange application called Rekindle. And I'll give you like an outline of what features you can add in it. So you can add a login and sign up capability. You can add locations. So if you're not very familiar with geomapping in Swift or in iOS, you can just add a location through an input text field. If you are familiar with geomapping and how to add location pins and all of those things, you can do the geomapping in Swift. Then you should add the books you can lend to others, like whatever you can lend. What you want to borrow, you should be able to search for that. And you should be able to have a book detail page with the owner's contact details, so that you can like contact each other and see where you can meet up and all of those things. Okay. And yeah, so if you do plan to do any of those things, please update me and show me your progress on my Twitter. This is my Twitter handle. It's not midget. Okay, and you can find me on GitHub here at midhatfatima94. You can also email me on this midhatfatima94@gmail.com. Also, you should join our Slack channel. I will copy this link and I will add it over here. You can join the Slack channel and add yourself into the channel called iOS and track and update your progress in iOS, Swift, Objective-C, whatever. You can also follow us on GDG WTM Kuwait. And you can also send me your updates over here on Instagram on GDG WTM Kuwait. All right. yeah, so that's it. Thank you for coming. I hope you had a good time and you learned something useful. Yeah, that's it. Thank you very much. Okay, now I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Yeah.